I know I like disappeared for June, but I have a good reason, guys. I really super do. So, I step out of my shower the one day, early June, and my floor decides to sink under my foot. Turns out my bathroom floor was rotting. So, for the past month, we have been, yeah, it's not good. We have been tearing apart the entire bathroom, which is connected to the kitchen, so also the kitchen, and now it is in midst of being repaired. So, yeah, that's kind of why I disappeared. I had a couple meltdowns during the whole thing. It was very overwhelming, but we are back. We are semi not melting down anymore. We're a little bit better. But we're back. We are going to have amazing episodes again. But I mean, to be fair, in 4 years, I've never actually taken a break. So I guess I kind of deserved it. All right. So with us today, we have Russell. Hello. How are you?
Thanks for having me. And I'm sorry about your bathroom. Did you actually kind of have your foot go through the floor at all, or
It didn't
just
go through, but like it was squishy. Like so, for those who's watching the video, you'll see this. For those that are listening, well, go watch the video. So like I stepped on it, and the floor kind of just went a little bit
oh
underneath
yeah.
my foot. Yeah, yeah. If I would have stayed longer, like put more pressure on it, it might have been worse. But yeah, I was like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't have I literally have heard people who had their legs literally go through the ceiling in
No,
situations
no,
like
no,
that.
no.
And they had to call the paramedics to help ease them out because I mean literally there's all these sharp things between floors, especially in bathrooms.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm glad that didn't happen to you.
Me too. Hearing that, whew, it was not that bad. Although tearing out the floor there, whoever owned the house before has had like just kept layering floors on top of each other. So I think that's what
Oh,
saved me, which is good. That's probably what saved me. But like so much floor had to come out, like so exhausted, and it was the most humid week we've had so far when we were doing it all. It was a lot. So tell us a little bit about you.
well, I have the worst case of dyslexia people have ever seen. Um, yeah, finally, I was diagnosed in college. My reading and writing skills were at the first grade level. And then I decided after I finished college to audit two law school classes. Um, Being scared of a dyslexic is the amount of reading and writing lawyers have to do. But I was a bit of a paradox when I went in. See, what they do in the States is they use a thing called the Socratic method,
Okay.
which basically means it's if you're interested, there's this famous movie about it called The Paper Chase from the 70s. Essentially, what they try to do is they try to humiliate you. They ask you questions, and if you don't know the answers, they keep asking you questions to train you as rapidly as possible to be able to argue any point of the law at any time in any
Got it.
direction. Okay.
Okay.
So it's kind of like doctors, they throw them into like a situation after they study and they say, okay, what do we do now? And you just
Yeah.
have no time, you have to get it right. Kind of that version. Well, my second day of contracts, I was called. And when it was your second day of class in law school, first year, you know nothing. They just humiliate you like every time. Well,
Gosh.
this is where it all came together for me. As a dyslexic, things just slowed down, and I could just see where the professors was going, where I was going to be going. I could see literally like 5 or 6 moves ahead. And
Wow. Okay.
we argued like two judges back and forth together, and he couldn't beat
Hmm.
me. I couldn't beat him. His name was Professor Warner. He was a dyslexic professor. That's why I went to see him. And at
Okay.
the end, he said, Russell, you couldn't be any more correct. Due to time, I have to move on to the next case. My classmates looked at me and said, they're just, number one, scared to death. And then they're in complete awe of me.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
said, even after those that continued on and graduated, they said they could still not even come close to what I did. Then a couple weeks later, I start taking my property um, quizzes. All right. Problem is, I can't read. Well, in those couple of weeks, because of what happened, now I can read. And you're supposed to read a question. And then after you get done with the question, you're supposed to think for 3 to 5 minutes. Well, I'm reading a lot slower, but after about a second, when I got done reading, I just knew the answer. I could think that much faster. So I'm turning in the quiz 20 minutes after it starts. I'm just sitting around, twiddling my thumbs, da, 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 and and my classmates can't finish. I was the only one that finished. I said, "This is a joke. This is so easy." And they say, "No, it's not." Well, I said, "Well, you can read and write. I can do this." Um, what ended up happening is I took it all together and I was like, okay, I want to help people that went through what I went through. So
Mhm.
I decided to focus on a very specific group of students to start off with. They were high school juniors and seniors, I think 16 to 18-year-olds, who were highly motivated, highly intelligent, excellent family support, college bound. And I said, what I want to do is I want to help them solve their reading and writing issues.
Mhm.
And I decided to use the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment. And
That
I
sounds
said,
hard.
yes, that's the test. It's like the SAT test to go into grad school for most Americans.
Okay.
I don't care if you're going into business, law, medicine, general, whatever. They all have the same writing assessment, but that's just the most popular one.
Okay.
And then I decided I wanted the New York State government to pay for it. And people said that's impossible. I said, well, not really. I'm dyslexic. This is where I learned being dyslexic in graduate school is a huge advantage. So I finally got I went to the New York State Education Department and they said they wanted something called a SUNY Distinguished Professor in Psychology, the very highest rank, to evaluate it, and 20 hours of testing and came back absolutely correct. So then I was sent over to a senior professor. His name was Dr. Collins. He wrote strategies for struggling writers, millions of dollars in federal grants over the years. And basically, what happened with him is um, as we were um, going through things, uh, I went through it very rapidly. I was told it was going to take years to get his approval, which is typical. Okay. Actually, I was done in less than 2 weeks. It was very fast. And that's where I found out that in graduate school, your currency is your ability to come up with ideas and get things done very rapidly. I only had less than 2 weeks because there's a university-wide competition, and I got $15,000 from that, which I needed. We tested out the program on the first student and her name was Michaela. She was a junior in high school, the best of her grade, writing at the eighth grade level. So think 16-year-old writing like a 13-year-old. And uh, within a couple of months, she was writing average of a student going into graduate school, think a 21 or 22-year-old. Yes, her spelling went from horrific to clean at the graduate level. We did that with another student. And then I went to the New York State Senate and I said, hi, fund my research. And they did.
That is
So
awesome.
it was in school for years. The key point is in that research, it costs less than $900 per student. They increase from the middle school writing to average of entering graduate school. 7, 8 grade level increases one class period for the school year, costs less than $900 a kid. They all went on to college, all graduated, no accommodations.
That's amazing.
Problem with that, I thought I was done.
Yeah.
I wasn't even getting started. So at that point, I was asked, how will this program work for a typical student? And I would say it'd be absolute disaster. It would be regressive. It would not be a benefit. It would be actually hurt them because what we found is as for dyslexics is we like to be specialists. We like to focus on a very narrow area. That's why we excel in grad school. And we don't want to become well-rounded educated. We want to be very narrow in our speciality. The GRE was all over the place. All right. Um, it ended up being a huge problem for these dyslexic kids because we're talking about this subject and that one something that assumes a college education or most of it, and
Hmm.
they just couldn't take it. So then I was asked, well, how do we take these massive gains and then move it over to everybody else? How do we do that? And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, the solution to that is extremely simple, that I found, but it took quite a bit of time to figure it out. what I initially found is this is the book that everybody uses.
Oh,
Okay.
overcoming dyslexia.
This is where they actually do the brain scans. And I'm going to simply show you. This should tell you, um, this image will show everything to you. Okay. Um, Let me get the right one here. Okay. Do you see this part of it?
Yep.
Do you see how the front part of the brain deals with articulation and word analysis?
Okay, yeah.
All right. Well, that's the key part because here's the dyslectic brain.
Uh,
We don't have neural activity in the back part of the brain. It's only a small fraction if you look at it from a different angle. But you see how much more active we are in the front part? It's about 2.5 times overactive. Okay. And that felt like articulation followed by word analysis. So what I had to do was to flip it to word analysis followed by articulation. Okay. And with that, that changed everything. So then I had to, but that ended up being the third point on my model. The first thing that we realize is when you're dealing with a typical student is we have to work with inside their speciality, their area of
okay.
extreme interest and ability.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's number one. So how do you figure that out for your dyslexic child or if you're dyslexic? Here's my question. If it's a Saturday morning and you have nothing else to do that day, what would you do? That's your speciality. The next thing that I found is when I talked to top dyslexic professors is I found something very interesting. It's that when they were in college, let's say they're STEM, like engineering science majors, they would take professors in philosophy who taught from the general, I'm sorry, from the specific to the specific to the general, not the general to the specific. They were so big on that teaching strategy that they would take classes that had nothing to do with their major.
Oh, okay.
And so from there, I came up with a few questions. Question number one, you ask your potentially dyslexic child or ADD or ADHD, do you have, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization?
I do.
Okay. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah, for me it definitely does.
Okay. So let's use you as an example. What's your speciality?
Um, well, I guess writing would be.
Okay. So you really enjoy writing. Okay. So I want you to think you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization. Okay. Here's my second question. Fingers, keyboard. Fingers, keyboard. You have the idea in your head about writing that you want to communicate by typing. It's in your head. Fingers, keyboard. You put your fingers on the keyboard. Does the idea fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain?
Yes, usually.
Okay. Congratulations, you're dyslexic.
That's funny.
No, I'm serious. Have you ever decided to get yourself tested?
No, because I can do all the things.
All right. Well, if you were to get tested, you're almost for sure going to be coming up with dyslexia. So
That's
the
funny.
reason I came up with those two questions is because parents in the United States will sometimes go out and spend $5,000, $8,000 on a neuropsychological evaluation to tell them that. And it's nice to have when I'm tutoring their kids or I'm
Mm-hmm.
teaching them to tutor their kids, but it's not absolutely required. You can spend that money more productively other places. Secondly, is when I'm talking to the kids. Now, when I just asked you those questions, has anybody ever asked you those before?
No.
Okay. Now, especially the second question, you have the idea in your head, you put your fingers on the keyboard, leaves you with an empty brain. Now, imagine back when you were a kid. How are you supposed to write with an empty head? See the challenge?
Yeah.
Are you now looking back at your educational days with this kind of explains a lot of things?
I don't know. I feel like I never emptied it fully. I think it just kept coming, maybe.
You were able to find a way. So let me ask you a third question. Okay. When you were in school, probably when you were somewhere between 7 and 10, were you ever potentially held back because of lack of grades?
No. No, I
Okay.
was pushed forward.
You were pushed forward. Do you have a exceedingly high IQ?
I've never been tested, but I would say yeah.
Okay. That would explain it. So Um, what you would probably find if you got tested. Have you ever heard of Mensa?
I've heard it. I have no idea what it is, though.
It's the requirement for membership is to be in the top 2% of an IQ. You would probably qualify.
I feel so special.
Okay. Now, do you see so when I'm talking to kids and I ask them those two questions, and they'll say yes. And I'll say, okay. So then I'll ask them, is this how you would want to overcome your learning concerns, your reading and your writing? And at that point, they normally say yes, because also I focus on their speciality. So if you can imagine, this is by far my most popular requested biography. This is
Really?
what the
Walt
kids are
Disney.
most, yeah,
Oh,
all 1,000 pages of it. Why? Have you ever been to any Disney property? Okay. Well, a lot of kids go to Disney World and they want to know, and we'll talk about the Disney magic. And I'll say, well, the Disney magic is this. Walt Disney was a lot of people think he was dyslexic.
I have heard that. Yeah.
And I'll say there are two universal things, two, that are the Disney magic. One is 90% of it. Would you like to learn and understand it? And they get very, very eager. I say, well, if you can read this massive book, I can tell you your reading and writing concerns are going to be resolved. All right. And I will literally start working with a 10-year-old on this monster. Okay.
Wow.
And this is designed for at least advanced high school kids, minimum. And by the time before middle school is over with, they're actually ready to walk into university.
Wow. Okay.
Because, go ahead.
Well, finish your thought, because then I'm
Well, the
gonna.
other thing is I teach them a concept from a book called The Craft of Research. It was designed for PhD students from the University of Chicago who who couldn't write their dissertation. That was 95. It's a fifth edition. It's now down to advanced high school kids. Okay. I drop it to fourth grade.
Gosh.
It's called Context, putting everything, you know, pretty much with context, you make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody understands what's going on. You state a problem, and then you state a solution where the reader actually learns something substantive, or don't write the paper. So if you don't follow the craft of research standards, so if you follow it, almost every paper written at the high school level and the college level in America shouldn't be written.
Wow.
And in elementary school, we teach context, and middle school, we teach the problem. And for the advanced students in high school, we teach the solution. This is what the professors told me they wanted after my original presentation. They said, we don't care about the GRE. Yeah, it's great. The kids are writing average or above average. We don't care. We got that already. We want to learn something. So I've taken what those three main points I told you above, and we put it in this scaffolding level. So that by the time they get to university, the professors desperately want to work with.
Very nice. I could not imagine doing all that so young, because I just was like, I want to go climb some trees and play in the mud.
Well, when we're dealing with the younger kids, I'll tell you what the most popular book is. It's Harry Potter.
I believe that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So imagine coming up, because there's a lot of, even what surprised me, there are university classes discussing the finer points of Harry Potter. And I'm like, imagine submitting a paper where the professor actually learned something substantive,
Hmm.
bringing a new point to the discussion. And imagine being able to do that for advanced kids in middle school.
Sounds so nice. Like, give them the confidence that they need at a young age instead of letting them wither away and
Oh, and
hurt.
here's even a more important point. I'm sure you heard of ChatGPT and the artificial
Oh,
intelligence.
yes, yes.
Well, a lot of companies now will not allow even the best writers write because the artificial intelligence, by maybe not doing as good of a job for drafts, can get you to a first draft much faster. So what the university professors and what companies are saying, after I discuss things with them, which kind of shocks them, is that this craft of research style, like every time they come up with a new model, a new AI model, they think you need to relearn how to prompt engineer.
Hmm.
And I'm like, no, we prompt engineer our head. If you understand context problem solution, you can work with any AI model and be very efficient at it, even if you've never used it before.
Hmm.
And just to give you such an extreme example, Along this lines, one of my clients years ago, I got a call from her professor because she said first day of class, she goes up to the professor and she went to this university to work with him. She said, "We got a big research paper. I've been doing craft of research for years. I'm kind of weak at it. This is what I need your help with." And he called me up. He said, "What is a college freshman doing with the craft of research?" I said, "Well, she's been working on it since seventh grade."
Wow.
He's like, "Excuse me?" I said, "Yeah, she's been doing this since seventh grade. She's not the best at it. Here are her strengths and weaknesses." Well, from that point forward, ever since she turned in her first paper, he wanted to work with her because of her writing skills and because of the fact he actually learned something from her initial paper. So he wanted to work with her because of what her of her thinking and writing skills, not wanting to work with her because of dyslexia. So we turned it 180 degrees. And now we don't have to start at seventh grade to get there. That was years and years ago. We got much more efficient since then, that point. But it's that important because you go out into any business that requires a college degree. What's the context? What's the problem? Now give me a solution that's going to make things better, faster, cheaper. One of those three.
Hmm.
Or two or better, all three. And those who can come up with the ideas and write it up so it can be implemented will be doing very well. AI just accelerates that trend. Those
Yeah.
who can't, it's not going to be a bright day.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, there's so many different things coming out now that you just have to learn how to use them.
Right. Well, the main point you're finding with AI, it's working with it. It does need
Yeah.
human guidance. As I said, it's really great to get you to the first draft, but then you need to know how to tell it to fix it, how to do this, how to do that.
Hmm.
And if you can do that and basically take the craft of research and apply it to anything we're doing today that requires a university education or an advanced degree, and you're going to be doing great. If you can't, it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
And this is what, when I keep telling people you don't need to learn how to prompt engineer every time there's a new model, we just prompt engineer our brain. That's the craft of research. And they discovered that 30 years ago.
Hmm. Excellent. So let me ask you this now. Let's go way back in the day. Because you said you weren't diagnosed until college.
No, I was diagnosed in actually going into third grade.
Okay, okay, I
I mean,
misunderstood.
I literally went through college was the first time I needed a new evaluation for
Okay.
going into grad school. And that's when I met Dr. Halichka. She was the SUNY Distinguished Professor I was telling you about
Yes, yes.
just by
Okay.
accident. She was the only one available. She had an office literally 400 feet from the South Campus at SUNY Center at Buffalo. And she was one of the world's leading psychologists. And she
Oh,
was the
yeah, yeah,
only one that could understand me.
yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. I was kind of confused, so I wanted to get my understanding. So way back when you were diagnosed, what kind of support did they have for you back then?
Nothing. I had to invent everything on my own.
Well, isn't that lovely? I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
clearly you've managed to.
Well, I mean, to give you an example, I remember in fifth grade we were learning about the Pilgrims. I desperately wanted to be with my class, and they said, "No, you can't do that." So finally, I went. I had neighbors that were on the school board, and I went to them. My parents went to them. I was in Scouts. I eventually got my Eagle. Their son was in scouting with me, and they forced me out for eighth grade for history. I was told I was going to flunk it. I got hundreds on every quiz, every test. All right. And the teacher said, I'm giving these same tests for 15 years. The highest score besides you was 90.
Wow.
And I never studied because I had to remember everything that was said. I couldn't write anything down.
Yeah.
And then I forced my way out for everything in high school. I had an 87 average my first quarter, 95.5 my last quarter, fourth in my class.
Wow.
I was really good at being able to, like on a spelling test, get a perfect score. Then two classes later, I couldn't remember any of the words.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I just had to keep developing new and new ways to overcome the problem
Yeah.
that eventually, when I went into law school and I finally learned to read within the first couple of weeks there, it just all came together. It was a combination of everything I was developing since I was like 8.
Yeah. Oh, Okay, that's kind of nice. I mean, obviously not nice that you had to struggle, but like nice that because you did all that, you were able to create something that not just helped you, but now you've expanded and now you're helping lots of other people.
But yeah, it's when I ask like those questions I asked you to students, and they're like, nobody's ever understand. It kind of freaks them out. Like that third question I asked you, were you about to fail? Well, if your IQ wasn't so extraordinary high, what happens is you'd find the dyslexic is above average, but not up in your league, is they're about to fail. They get extraordinarily frustrated, and I mean clinically frustrated. Like
Yeah.
this is dangerous. And then then the solution presents itself. It's what I call controlled frustration. And they pass. And by the time they're in high school, they're so used to it. And I call that their secret, and the kids are desperate for their parents not to find out. Because when I say it's clinically dangerous, I mean it is clinically dangerous. Take they literally frustrate themselves to the point of saying that they're worthless. Their family will abandon them if they don't solve this problem,
Yeah.
especially for girls. Holding them back for a class and taking all their friends away.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it literally gets to the point of almost a mental emergency. The stress these kids put on themselves, and then the idea presents itself. And then I'm asked, well, is there ways that we can use controlled frustration to accelerate learning? And I said, yes, it's completely unethical. And there are parts that can be considered after you're 18, after a high school, and only for, like I had a few students I'd work on that with on a very limited basis they finished high school, they're 18, they can't read or write, and they want to start college in the fall. So we have to do a couple of years worth of work in, 2 months.
Yeah.
But besides that, I say, no, this other way is fast enough. We're not going to go there.
Yeah.
But if you ever see a kid who's so frustrated because they have to pass a test or be held back, I just want to let you know that is really dangerous.
Hmm.
Okay, and we shouldn't be putting kids through that.
Excellent. Yeah, that is good information to have. Um, so what are you doing now? Like, obviously, you have a lot going on, but
Uh, my state, New York, just found something very interesting. We had a state senator. He's brilliant, one of the nicest guys, smartest guys I ever met. His name is Senator Hoyleman. He's a Rhodes Scholar, Harvard Law grad, and his daughter, he found out in fourth grade that she's dyslexic. Okay, and her evaluation was $8,000, and she's in I think a $70,000 a year private school. His family can afford that.
yeah.
Okay, his extended family. All right. But he said, what about everybody else? So he wanted the rest of the state to be corrected because if you found it in kindergarten, first grade, it can be fixed.
Yeah.
Problem is K3 is the problem. K3, you learn to read. After third grade, you read to learn.
Yes.
So they came up with this huge state task force, like 100 of the best people for a year, and they produced a report. Anybody can go to New York State Department of Education Dyslexia Task Force and read it. So then this year they wanted to implement the bill. What they were going to do was to uh, give the kids, a dyslexic kid, because once they found out they're dyslexic, 45 minutes of additional reading and writing support with the best current science a day, in addition to what they're currently getting, until the problem's solved. They want it solved by the end of fifth grade. Well, they couldn't afford it. So, do you remember how I told you my original program was less than $900?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I was competing with, at the time, Landmark College, and I'm just getting the data from New York Times. At the time, that's the best dyslexic college in the world. They were they were doing a 2-year program for an associate's degree at the time to send you off to a 4-year college. 2 to 3 years at 50,000 plus a year, so 150,000. Their success rate was around 25 to 33%. Mine cost less than 1% of that, and 25th the time or less, and it had 100% success rate. So it's vastly less expensive.
Yes.
Okay.
And more successful.
Yeah. So we are in the process. I'm working with Evelyn White Bay. She was on the dyslexia task force as a teacher. She was 2 to 3 times more successful than your typical teacher, sometimes 4 times. Um, and we're trying to work with the state right now to show that in one six hour window, we can go in and train special ed teachers to take kids who can't write, see, spot, run, and bring them through a 5 paragraph essay that'll get them through get them through high school in 6 hours. So we're in the process of pitching our first school district on that one. We're
Hmm.
in the process of working on the proposal, and then we want to try to get that statewide because honestly, we can do in a day what our competitors will take months to do.
Yeah. Well, because you just want to help, and they probably want to make money.
Well, we do both, but when you get the efficiency down to 6 hours, you can be
Yes.
there's a lot to do. You know,
Right?
if you're in a rich suburban school district, we can charge retail. If you're in a poor, boys and girls club, I always found you got to charge something or people don't take it seriously.
Right? Yeah.
You charge a very nominal one and you have them come in the same Zoom session. So we want to make sure everybody has it available, but now we're going off and getting the official data
Yeah.
for it. And I just
Amazing.
help Evelyn with a lot, but she's really the one behind it.
Amazing. That's so awesome. So what piece of wisdom would you give to parents when their kids are little and they're like, why aren't you grasping this?
First thing that I would do if they're young, and I'm talking kindergarten, first
Yep.
grade,
Talking
I
little.
would literally just go to Google and type in Yale dyslexia. Yale dyslexia. It's the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creative Studies. And I would contact them to say, what is the quick and inexpensive way of getting my child tested for dyslexia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why am I sending you to Yale and not somebody else? Because it's one of the world's clearinghouses, and I want you to get the very best information directly from them. Okay. Find out that your kid's dyslexic and then start working on it immediately. Yale has programs that have been federally funded. I mean, a lot of these programs, you're talking $1 million or more to develop. Get those implemented. Insist that the school district do this, because if you can, the key thing is you got to get them get them to pass that third grade reading and writing test. If you follow what Yale recommends, by the end of third grade, they'll pass that test or they'll be close to it.
Yeah.
If you ignore it and it's fourth grade, you're going to be in the same position that Senator Hoylman was in, which is now if you're using a traditional method, you're talking about a $70,000 a year private school using the Orton Gillingham approach.
Which
Or you can
is,
contact me and I can show you how to do it. And it's not that hard to fix. I focus on fourth and above simply because I'm not fighting with the LK3. And also with my material, the older you are, the quicker you pick it up. With the traditional Orton Gillingham, the older you are, the harder it is because you have to go back and relearn what you're already supposed to learn, plus what you're supposed to currently learning.
right?
I jump on the other side of that.
Okay. Very
So
interesting.
yeah, so that is the best advice I can give your guests.
Yes, which is so important because like you said before, the earlier the earlier you can catch it, the easier it is to help.
The easier it is, but I will tell you, I have had parents are like, oh, my kid's in high school, or my kid's in fifth grade, or we can't do anything. And actually, you can. I have worked with kids. I'd get them in high school. They would say, "Yeah, I like Disney. I can never read this."
Yeah.
And then the year later, they're reading that.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
amazing. Love that.
The privates, just to give you an example of how I compare to the private schools, there's
Okay.
one for the comment period when we were doing the dyslexia task force called the Windward School in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. This is where Wall Street parents live. All right.
Okay. Fancy.
Fantastic school. They've been doing it for decades.
Mm-hmm.
They have a 98% rate of taking kids in, working with them, and then sending them back to the school they came from. And they're very successful. Guess how long they typically at the Windward School?
5 years.
4 to 5 years at a cost of about 75,000 a year.
Oh, I was right.
Or I can show parents to teach their kids, and within if they want to push it, because Winward does prepare them to go as good as any of the best private schools in the country. I can show them how to do this completely within about 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about completely, I'm talking about coming up with original things to say, which is something Windward or any other K through 12 school in America doesn't really do. And that's the focal point of what I do is that at the end, if you want to go into college, you really should be able to come up with something original to say each time you write. Or as the craft of research says, don't.
Love, I love all that. Um, do you have anything else that you want to share? Um,
Uh, Nope, just if people want to learn more about what I do or ask any questions, if you go to dyslexiaclasses.com, that's plural, dyslexiaclasses.com, there's a contact me, just type out something and I'll be happy to come and explain things to you. We also are offering for your audience, it's a short report about the 3 reasons dyslexic children struggle in school and how to get past it. And if you go ahead and fill that out, I also speak to you for about 15 minutes, give you a free 15-minute discussion, see where your child is, basically going over those 2 questions, all right, with your child. And then pretty much I ask, is this how you'd like to overcome your concerns? And I can tell you, dyslexic kids are much harder as reviewers than any PhD I've ever met, even harder than Dr. Holichka. Because I would ask them, and I would say, they're like, I had one kid, her name was Sarah. And she said, I'm tough. You're not going to get past me. And I asked those 3 questions. And she said, it was third grade. I was going to lose my friend. I had to, I had to really struggle and I got frustrated and then I got the answer and I passed the test and I could be with my friend. And she's
oh,
like, you understand me? And she's like, how? I said, well, you think you're the only one. And then she had to think, she's like, oh, there are other people like me who are adults. I said, yes. And I didn't go to a $70,000 a year private school. Give you a little hint. My parents had good jobs, and could they have done it? Well, yeah, but I had 2 sisters. One was into horses, one was into gymnastics. Were they supposed to not have anything to do? Were we supposed to be driving one $500 car, not have Christmas so I could go to one of those schools? My parents did, they really helped, did as much as they could, but I
hmm.
had sisters who had expensive hobbies as well. We're not Bill Gates. Most families aren't.
No, exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, you answered my other question. Where do people follow you? So,
Yeah, I make sure I get that in there because a lot of folks tend to have questions.
right? And I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here for helping.
Exactly. And when I tell people like what I do, it's mainly because I don't want parents to go through the hell that I went through. So most of the time, what I end up doing is I train parents to work with their kids, and everything I do, I have all my information online. And yes, we set up the pricing so it works for everybody.
Yeah, which is so nice to hear.
Well, I will let you know by far my most successful cases were lower middle class families.
That's
My most
amazing.
successful case ever was Casey. Okay, real brief. Casey was 10 near the end of 5th grade when her parents contacted me, and I never saw this before. I will never see it again. Okay, Casey was desperate to overcome her reading issue. She's reading at the 2nd grade level. So what I did is I assigned her a book that was very, actually, here's her book right here. She was interested in Theodore Roosevelt.
Okay.
All 900 pages of it.
Wow, that is a big old book.
Yes, won the Pulitzer. It's the book. Just there's 3 of them in that series. If you want to learn about that American president, so she wanted to do reading first. She was a very insistent 10-year-old. So I gave her a modified process and 2 to 3 hours a night, every night for 6 months, most of the summer, and then she knew every word in that book. How did I know how it ended? Her teacher called me because in silent reading, she's sitting there with that massive book, and everybody else is reading Harry Potter or whatever, and Twilight or whatever. And her classmates came over and said, "What's that?" She said, "That's my book." She's like, "What's that for?" It's like, for an outside reading program. None of them could get past the first paragraph. She could not only tell them what the first paragraph was about, she could literally read off the dictionary definition of every word in that paragraph and every word in that book. We worked together another couple of years, and by the time, and so before that, just to see, her teacher called her mom, and they said, "Thought your daughter had a severe case of dyslexia. She's the best reader in the class. What's going on?" Then her mom talked to me, and I said, I worked with her for only 15 minutes a week. And I said,
Okay.
"What do you think your daughter's been doing in her room locked away hours a night for 6 months?" Oh, so we worked together for another couple of years on it. And before she went to high school, literally she could have walked into Harvard and done.
That's amazing.
As I said, I'll never see it again in that fast. Normally, to get through that book takes at least 12 months, normally 18. And that's if the kid is really working hard. Casey was an aberration, but when people say it can't be done, then,
It
well,
can.
an 11-year-old did it. So you have
Amazing.
a master's degree. I can show you how to do this.
Amazing. Amazing. Oh, I love all that. I love hearing those stories, the ones where it's such a good outcome at the end.
And Casey's mom was a part-time hairdresser. Father worked in a factory, and I was getting paid 150 a month. That's why I was working with her 15 minutes a week.
Yeah.
And
That's,
honestly, that besides an occasional text where she said, "I'm stuck," the 2-minute conversation,
yeah.
that's all it took. And that was a
Amazing.
very motivated 10-year-old.
Yes. Yeah, which is helpful. You do need to be motivated. Yeah.
Yeah, but that just gives you an example. Most of the time it takes longer.
Yes. Yes.
But I tell people, if you can read this, you can go to college.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a great interview.
Thanks. So, guys, go and check out the website. Say it one more time, Russell.
It's dyslexiaclasses.com.
Excellent. Yeah, classes, plural.
Yes.
Awesome. Go on, check that out. Make sure, I would say bookmark that page because you never know who you're going to meet later in life that maybe you don't need that information now, but maybe eventually you meet a coworker or another parent and they might need the info. So
Yes,
bookmark
and we
it and
just
share.
don't do basic reading and writing. The farthest that I go is helping PhDs coming up with their ideas and the concept problem solution model that we've simplified.
Yeah.
I routinely discuss things with, you know, chief operating officers, top people in companies who need to say, how do we solve major business problems where solutions work? We do that as well.
Love that. So yeah,
And I give them
bookmark it, share it.
and I
Yeah.
give a little hint. If you hire dyslexics, especially with graduate degrees, mostly masters, you'll find that they can pick up on this really well and go really deep.
Excellent. Excellent. And then, of course, be sure to like and subscribe to the show if you have not already, and share our episodes out. We are coming up with some really cool things. I have something very cool in the works, not quite ready to officially announce yet, but something very cool is coming up. And yeah, it's a little overwhelming, but I'm super excited. So keep tuned. Bye. Wait, we have to
Thanks
say
for
our
having me on.
catchphrase. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.